Twists and Truths presents Bullying's Hidden Scars, the story of Emma Carter. A dramatic story of pain, silence, and the strength to rise again. The first note showed up in Emma Carter's locker on a rainy Thursday morning. "You don't belong here." 4 words, written in red ink, no name, no signature. Just that sentence, sharp as a knife. At first, Emma laughed it off. She told herself it was a prank, maybe a joke gone too far. But when she looked up, 3 girls from her English class were whispering near the lockers, glancing her way, smirking. Something in her stomach twisted. The beginning of the bruises you can't see. Emma was 15, quiet, bright. She loved to draw, to write poetry, to stay after school, and help her art teacher clean brushes. She wasn't popular, but she wasn't invisible either, at least not yet. That changed after a class project paired her with the wrong group. Madison, the queen bee of sophomore year, didn't like Emma, not because of anything she'd done, but because Emma had something Madison didn't: genuine kindness. In a world where cruelty was currency, kindness was weakness. It started small. Whispered jokes, mocking her thrift store clothes. Screenshots of her Instagram posts shared with cruel captions. Then came the edited photos. Someone took her selfie, drew devil horns over her head, and posted it to Snapchat with the caption, "When charity cases think they're cute." By the time Emma saw it, 30 people had already viewed it. Her phone buzzed with laughter, not hers. That night, she deleted every photo of herself online. But the next day, someone printed the post and taped it to her locker. The digital attack. Cyberbullying wasn't a rumor anymore. It was a public spectacle. Anonymous accounts popped up with her name in them. At Weird Emma, at Crybaby Carter. They posted memes about her voice, her hair, her weight. One message said, "If you disappeared tomorrow, no one would notice." She reported the accounts. They disappeared for a day, then came back under new names. At school, whispers followed her like shadows. At home, the silence did too. Her mother worked late shifts at the hospital. Her father had left years ago. So every night, it was just Emma, her reflection on a dark phone screen, and the echo of cruel words she couldn't unhear. The words started to sound true. Her once colorful sketches turned gray, her poetry darker. She stopped talking in class, stopped eating lunch with anyone, stopped smiling, but the bullies didn't stop. Because cruelty doesn't stop when silence begins. It feeds on it. The breaking point. One day, Emma came home to find her little brother, Luke, holding her phone. "Why are they saying mean things about you?" he asked innocently. Her heart sank. He had clicked on one of her notifications, a TikTok someone made mocking her nervous presentation from class. Over 4,000 views, hundreds of laughing emojis. She took the phone, locked herself in her room, and slid down the wall. It wasn't just humiliation anymore. It was desperation. She tried to tell her teacher once, Mrs. Gray, her English teacher, but froze halfway through. The words wouldn't come, because what if telling made it worse? She imagined the whispers. Emma told. Emma's a victim. Emma's weak, so she didn't. She just kept quiet until the day she couldn't anymore. The incident. It was late November. The school was buzzing with excitement for the winter dance. Emma didn't plan on going, but her friend Zoe, one of the few still speaking to her, begged her to come, saying, "Don't let them win." So Emma went. She wore a simple blue dress and a brave smile she didn't feel. For the first hour, everything was fine, until someone turned off the lights during a slow song. The music stopped. Laughter erupted. Then, out of the dark, a voice shouted, amplified by a phone speaker, "Attention, everyone! The real reason Emma Carter came tonight, to get pity likes." When the lights came back on, a projector lit up the back wall. Her private messages, screenshots from her personal group chat, where she had vented about how hard things had been. Someone had hacked her phone. Her secrets, her pain, were now public entertainment. Her legs gave out. The laughter blurred into white noise. She ran out the gym doors, into the cold, barefoot on the wet pavement. The aftermath. Emma didn't go to school for the next week. Rumors spread that she'd moved, that she'd been suspended, that she'd had a breakdown. No one knew she was in the hospital, recovering from a panic attack so severe she couldn't breathe. Mrs. Gray visited her there. She sat by Emma's bed and said quietly, "You don't have to be silent anymore." That was the moment something inside Emma shifted. Maybe it wasn't strength yet, but it was the beginning of it. With her teacher's help, her mother contacted the principal. An investigation began. The school traced the leak to 3 students, Madison and her friends. When confronted, Madison said, "It was just a joke. We didn't mean to hurt her." But Emma's eyes told another story. A story of 1,000 invisible wounds. The healing. Healing wasn't instant. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't easy. Therapy helped. So did art. The same sketches she once hid became her lifeline. She started painting again. A series called Hidden Scars. Each piece was raw and haunting, faceless silhouettes surrounded by cruel words, but reaching toward the light anyway. Her art teacher submitted the collection to a statewide competition. It won first place. When Emma accepted the award, she stood on stage, trembling but steady, and said, "These paintings are for anyone who ever believed the lies that others told about them. I know what it feels like to think you don't matter, but you do. I did too. I just forgot for a while." The room was silent. Then people began to stand, clapping. In that moment, she realized something powerful. The same world that had torn her down could also help her rise. The other side of the story. Madison didn't clap. She watched from the back, guilt crawling like fire beneath her skin. The attention, the likes, the laughs hadn't filled the emptiness she'd been trying to hide. Her parents fought constantly. Her father's anger filled the house like smoke. Her mother pretended everything was fine. Bullying had been her armor, a way to control something when everything else was chaos. But now she saw the cost, the damage, the girl she almost destroyed. A week later, Madison showed up outside the art room where Emma was cleaning brushes. Her voice shook. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "You don't have to forgive me. But I needed you to know that I see what I did." Emma didn't say anything at first. Then she nodded. "Thank you for saying it," she said softly. "But you should tell the others too." Madison did. And slowly, painfully, change began to ripple through the halls of their school, from victim to voice. Months later, Emma returned to the same auditorium, not as a trembling student, but as a speaker. Her presentation was called Bullying's Hidden Scars. She didn't preach, she told her story, the loneliness, the fear, the way words can crush a soul faster than fists. When she finished, the silence in the room was different. Not cruel this time, it was listening. Afterward, a freshman girl approached her, eyes wet. "They're doing the same thing to me," she whispered. "But I didn't know anyone else understood." Emma took her hand and said, "I do. And you're not alone anymore." That's how the Hidden Scars Project was born, an online campaign that paired survivors of bullying with mentors. Within months, it reached hundreds of schools. Her story spread, not as gossip this time, but as hope. Closing monologue, the truth beneath the surface. Bullying isn't always visible. It doesn't always leave bruises you can photograph. Sometimes it looks like the quiet student eating lunch alone, the kid who suddenly stops talking in class, the friend who deletes every post overnight. Behind every silence, there's a story. Behind every cruel comment, there's a pain that needs healing. Emma's story reminds us that cruelty can go viral, but so can compassion. The same phones that spread hate can also share hope. The same networks that isolate us can also connect us. And the same people who once stayed silent can become the loudest advocates for change. Because the scars we can't see, those are the ones that last the longest. But they can also be the ones that lead us back to strength, truth, and courage. Moral twists and truths. Message: bullying ends when silence breaks. The words we say can destroy or they can heal. Choose to be the reason someone keeps fighting, not the reason they stop. Twists and Truths presents Madison's story, The Bully Who Needed Healing. Everyone at Crestview High used to know her name. Madison Lane, perfect hair, perfect smile, perfect reputation, captain of the cheer team, social media queen, the kind of girl people followed, sometimes out of admiration, more often out of fear, but no one really knew her. And no one saw the cracks forming behind the perfection, the performance. Madison's morning started with the sound of shouting. Her father's voice, sharp as broken glass, cut through the thin apartment walls. Her mother's silence followed, long, tired silences that said, "Don't fight back, don't make it worse." Every day began the same. Anger, tension, and the heavy smell of coffee gone cold on the kitchen counter. So Madison learned early how to survive. Smile, perform, pretend. At school, she wasn't the girl from the broken home. She was the girl everyone envied. Her Instagram glowed with sunlight and laughter, birthday brunches, new outfits, a group of friends always posing, always happy. Each picture was a lie she desperately wanted to believe. And when her anxiety whispered that she wasn't good enough, she found a way to drown it out by making someone else feel smaller. The target. The first time she noticed Emma Carter, Madison wasn't even angry. Emma had answered a question in English class that Madison got wrong. Nothing big. But the way Emma's classmates smiled at her, it stung. That night, scrolling through Instagram, Madison saw Emma's art posts. Messy, heartfelt, creative. And the comments. "You're so talented. You should sell your work." The jealousy flared, sharp and immediate. Madison told herself it wasn't jealousy, just a joke. So she reposted Emma's drawing with the caption, "When art class turns into preschool." It got laughs, it got likes. It gave Madison a rush, that fleeting, poisonous kind of validation that comes from power. One post turned into three turned into a group chat. By the next week, it wasn't a joke anymore. It was a mission. She didn't think about how Emma might feel. She didn't want to. Because if she looked too closely, she might have seen her own reflection in the girl she was tearing apart. Quiet, afraid, invisible at home. And Madison couldn't afford to feel that again. The power of cruelty. Cruelty has momentum. The more she used it, the more control she felt. When her father yelled, she shut down. But when she made someone else cry, she felt powerful again. So she leaned into it. She made group chats with names like Project Carter and Loser Watch. She shared screenshots, rumors, doctored photos. Her friends followed her lead, some out of fear, some out of amusement, some because it was easier to join in than to stand against her. It was addictive. The constant notifications, the rush of likes, the invisible high of being noticed. Until the night it all went too far, the breaking point. It was Madison's idea to project Emma's private messages during the winter dance. She told herself it was harmless, just a prank, just another laugh. Her friend Kayla hesitated. "Madison, what if this ruins her?" "She's too dramatic to be ruined," Madison snapped. "Besides, she'll get over it." When the lights went out and the projector flickered on, Madison felt that familiar rush. The thrill of control. But then Emma's face appeared on the screen, frozen, humiliated, terrified. And for the first time, the laughter in the room didn't sound fun. It sounded cruel. It sounded like him, her father's voice. Loud, angry, unforgiving. Emma ran out. The room went quiet, and Madison's stomach twisted into a knot she couldn't undo. The guilt. The next morning, Madison woke to dozens of messages. That was epic. You destroyed her. You're savage. The comments should have made her proud. Instead, they made her sick. When the principal called her into the office 2 days later, she expected to get suspended. She didn't expect to see Mrs. Gray crying. Emma's in the hospital, the teacher said quietly. She had a panic attack. You need to understand what you've done. Madison froze. Hospital. Panic attack. Words that didn't fit the story she'd been telling herself. That it was all harmless. That it didn't matter. That Emma was too sensitive. Something cracked inside her that day. A soundless fracture that kept widening. The silence. The investigation spread through the school like wildfire. Parents called, reporters showed up, Madison's name trended locally, not for cheerleading, but for cruelty. Her father's response was simple. Deal with it. You made your bed. Her mother said nothing, just looked away. For the first time, Madison felt what Emma must have felt. The isolation, the whispers, the endless stares. Her phone buzzed with messages from people pretending to check on her but really fishing for gossip. She stopped going online, stopped eating, stopped pretending she was okay. At night, she replayed Emma's face in her mind, the way she'd looked right before she ran out of the gym. It haunted her. So did the echo of her own laughter, the confrontation. 2 months later, Madison found herself standing outside the art room. She'd heard Emma was back. Part of her wanted to turn around. The other part, the smaller, braver part, refused. Emma was washing paintbrushes when Madison walked in. She didn't notice her at first. When she finally did, she froze. Madison's throat went dry. Her voice barely came out. I came to say I'm sorry, she said. Not for the school, not for my record, for you. Emma said nothing. Her eyes, calm, steady, didn't flinch. You don't have to forgive me, Madison whispered. I wanted you to know that I see it now. What I did, what it cost you, what it cost me. Emma looked at her for a long time. Then finally she said, Then don't just say it to me. Say it to everyone. Madison nodded. Her voice trembled. I will. The reckoning. The school held an assembly a week later, a mandatory one about bullying, empathy, and mental health. Madison volunteered to speak. The gym was packed. The same space where she'd once humiliated Emma now felt suffocatingly quiet. She took the mic with shaking hands. For a moment, no words came. Then she said the hardest sentence of her life. I was the bully. A ripple moved through the crowd. Phones rose, cameras recorded. I told myself it was a joke. That it didn't matter, that I was just being funny, but it wasn't funny. It was cruel, and I need everyone to understand that when you laugh at someone's pain, you're helping destroy them. I almost destroyed someone I didn't even take the time to know. Her voice broke. Emma, if you're here, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I made you feel like you didn't matter. I'm sorry for every message, every post, every rumor. You didn't deserve it. Nobody does. Silence filled the room. Then quietly people began to clap. Not the kind of applause that celebrates, but the kind that forgives. Emma stood in the back, her eyes wet but calm. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. The redemption. In the months that followed, Madison's life didn't magically get better. Her reputation was shattered. Some people refused to look her in the eye. Others whispered that her apology was a stunt. But she kept going. She joined the Hidden Scars Project, Emma's anti-bullying initiative, as a volunteer. At first, people were skeptical. Why let a former bully help? Because, as Emma said at the first meeting, who better to help stop it than someone who's been on the other side? Madison began speaking to younger students, not about perfection, but about pain, about how power can become poison, about how the strongest people are often the ones trying hardest to hide their hurt. Her story hit home. She wasn't the polished cheerleader anymore. She was a mirror for kids who lashed out because they didn't know how to ask for help. The truth beneath the anger. One evening, after a long day of mentoring, Madison sat alone in the empty gym. She looked up at the ceiling, the same one that had once echoed with laughter at someone else's pain, and whispered, "I get it now." She finally understood. Bullying isn't born from strength. It's born from pain, redirected, disguised, and weaponized. Every cruel comment, every rumor, every shove in the hallway. It all came from people trying to outrun their own shadows. She took a deep breath. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt like healing, the two sides of the same wound. A year later, the school hosted an event called Voices Unheard. Students who had once been bullied shared their stories, and those who had once bullied shared their redemption. Emma and Madison spoke together, side by side, and not as enemies, not as victim and villain, but as survivors of different kinds of pain who had finally chosen truth over silence. Emma said, "Forgiveness isn't saying what happened was okay. It's saying it doesn't get to control you anymore." Madison added, "And sometimes the hardest person to forgive is yourself." The room erupted in quiet applause. Behind them, a new generation of students watched, some who had bullied, some who had been bullied, realizing maybe for the first time that both sides of cruelty bleed. The message here is, not every bully is evil, not every victim stays broken. Behind every act of cruelty, there's a story, pain trying to find a voice. But there's no excuse for silence, no excuse for harm. Madison's journey reminds us that shame doesn't have to be the end. It can be the beginning of change. And Emma's reminds us that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means turning your pain into purpose. So, the next time you see cruelty unfolding, whether in a hallway, a comment section, or a group chat, remember, silence sides with the bully. Courage stands with the truth. Twists and truths moral. Hurt people, but healed people heal others. Be the reason someone chooses kindness instead of cruelty. Twists and Truths presents Luke's Promise, the brother who fought back, the final chapter of Bullying's Hidden Scars trilogy. The night Emma came home from the hospital, the world seemed too quiet. The walls whispered, the air felt heavy, and Luke Carter, just 13, sat outside her bedroom door, knees pulled to his chest, listening to the soft hum of her breathing through the wood. He didn't understand everything that had happened, but he knew this. Something had broken inside his sister, and the world had looked the other way. The brother who saw everything. Before the incident, Emma had been his hero. She taught him to draw, helped him with homework, and made him pancakes shaped like stars. Then, little by little, she changed. She stopped humming in the mornings, stopped eating breakfast, stopped laughing at his terrible jokes. When Luke asked why, she just said she was tired. But he wasn't stupid. He saw the messages pop up on her phone. He saw her delete entire posts with shaking hands. He saw the dark circles under her eyes and the smile she forced when their mom looked her way. He wanted to ask who was hurting her, but every time he did, she'd whisper, "It's fine, Luke. Just stay out of it." So he did, and it haunted him ever since. The guilt that lingers. After Emma's breakdown, the house became a ghost of itself. The TV stayed off. Dinner conversations were replaced with silence. Even the light felt dimmer somehow. Luke blamed himself. If he had spoken up sooner, told their mom, told a teacher, maybe things would have been different. At school, people whispered about Emma's collapse like it was gossip. Someone even made a TikTok about it. The girl who couldn't handle a joke. Luke saw it, and something in him snapped. He shoved the phone into his backpack, marched to the bathroom, and punched the metal stall door until his knuckles bled. No teacher ever found out. But in that moment, Luke made a promise. No one's going to break her again, not while I'm here. The fire inside. The next semester, Luke started high school. Same halls, same lockers, same whispers. Emma was getting better, volunteering for the Hidden Scars project with Madison, the girl who'd once destroyed her. Luke didn't trust it. When he saw Madison walking down the hall one morning, he felt a heat rise in his chest. He wanted to scream. He wanted to make her feel what Emma felt, but he didn't, because Emma had told him not to. "Hurting her won't heal me," she said. "Promise me, Luke, don't become what broke us." He'd promised, but promises don't erase anger. They just bury it deeper, the new target. It didn't take long before the cycle started again. Only this time, Luke wasn't the observer. He became the target. It started in gym class. A senior named Derek Miles thought Luke looked soft. When Luke missed a basket during a scrimmage, Derek sneered, "Guess weakness runs in the family." The other boys laughed. Luke clenched his fists, wanted to swing. But he remembered Emma's eyes the night she came home from the hospital, hollow and fragile. So he walked away. But walking away didn't end it. By the end of the week, there were memes, pictures of him photoshopped crying, captions like, "Carter cries 2.0. He heard laughter behind his back in the cafeteria, saw eyes roll when he passed. Different bullies, same poison. That night, he stared at the mirror, the reflection of his sister's old pain staring back. "Not this time," he whispered. The anonymous post. 2 days later, an anonymous account tagged Luke on a video. It showed him sketching in the art room, alone, focused. The caption read, "Like sister, like loser." His stomach dropped. He'd been followed, filmed. He felt the heat of humiliation crawl up his neck. But this time he didn't run. He screenshotted everything. And instead of retaliating, he did something different. He sent it to Emma. Within minutes, she called him. "Luke, listen to me," she said, her voice steady. "You're not alone. We're going to handle this the right way." The turning point. Emma and Luke went straight to Principal Harris. They brought screenshots, names, accounts, timestamps. The principal nodded, serious but cautious. "We'll investigate," she said, "but these things take time." Luke could tell she didn't get it. To her, it was just another incident. To him, it was war. That night, he opened his phone and typed a post under his real name. "You think bullying dies when the victim speaks up? It doesn't. It changes targets. I watched it happen to my sister. Now it's happening to me. But I'm not hiding anymore." He hit post. He didn't expect what came next. The ripple. Within hours, the post went viral. Hundreds of students reshared it, then teachers, then parents. Some wrote, "This took courage." Others confessed, "This happened to me too." By morning, local news picked up the story. The school issued a formal statement. Derek Miles and 2 others were suspended. But something even bigger happened, a movement. Students started posting their own stories under the hashtag #hidden scars too. Stories of name calling, isolation, rumors, cyberbullying, things they'd kept buried for years. Luke didn't mean to start a revolution. He just refused to stay silent. But maybe silence was the real monster all along. The meeting. A week later, Luke got called into the office again. Not for punishment, but for a request. Madison Lane wanted to see him. He hesitated, jaw tight. The image of Emma crying years ago flashed in his mind. But he went. She was sitting in the counselor's room, hands clasped. When she saw him, she stood. "You don't know me," she said quietly, "but I know what I did to your sister. And I need to say this to you. I'm sorry." Luke stared at her. Part of him wanted to walk out. Part of him wanted to believe her. "Do you know what you did to us?" he asked, his voice breaking. "I used to hear her cry through the wall. I used to think I could fix it, but I couldn't. No one could." Tears welled in Madison's eyes. "I know," she said, "and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right." She handed him a bracelet, a black band with the words, "Choose kindness." "We're making these for the Hidden Scars Project," she said. "Maybe you can help us." Luke looked down at it. He didn't say yes, but he didn't throw it away either. The speech. Months passed. The bullying subsided. Luke grew quieter. Not out of fear this time, but focus. He started drawing again. His new project, The Silent Generation. Portraits of students who had suffered in silence. Each face was half lit, half shadowed, representing the parts of them the world never saw. When the Hidden Scars Project invited him to speak at their annual event, he almost said no. But Emma convinced him. "Your voice matters now," she told him. "Use it." So he stood on that stage in front of hundreds of students, teachers, parents, even Madison. He took a deep breath and said, "When I was younger, I watched my sister almost disappear because of bullying. Everyone saw it happening, but no one stopped it, not even me. And when it happened to me, I understood why. Fear, shame, silence. But silence protects the wrong people. It gives bullies power. I'm done being silent." He held up his wrist, the black bracelet glinting under the stage lights. "You don't have to wear this to prove you care. You just have to act. Speak up, stand up, because when you fight cruelty with courage, you change everything. For someone who might not survive without it." The auditorium erupted in applause. Emma was crying. Even Madison smiled through tears. The promise. After the event, Luke found Emma sitting on the steps outside the auditorium. The sky was streaked with orange and pink, the kind of sunset that made everything feel possible again. He sat beside her, resting his head on her shoulder. "You did it," she whispered. "No," Luke said softly. "We did." They sat there in silence, not the heavy kind that used to haunt them, but the peaceful kind that comes after survival. He looked down at his bracelet, then at her. "I made a promise that night when you came home from the hospital," he said, "that I'd never let anyone break you again. But I realized something." She turned to him. "You don't need me to protect you. You're already stronger than all of them. I just need to keep fighting so no one else goes through what we did." Emma smiled. "Then keep that promise, Luke. Not just for me, for everyone still fighting to be seen. The legacy of Hidden Scars." A year later, the Hidden Scars Project had spread to 30 schools across 3 states. Students wore black bracelets in solidarity, not as fashion, but as testimony. Each one symbolized a story once buried in silence. Emma became a youth advocate, Madison a mentor, and Luke, the artist, the voice of a generation learning that healing doesn't erase pain, it transforms it. His mural, Beneath the Concrete, was unveiled on the school wall. A massive painting of 3 figures, a girl holding a cracked heart made of glass, a boy raising his hand against the darkness, and behind them, faint but eternal, a rising sun breaking through the gray. The plaque beneath it read, "To everyone who has ever been broken, May you find the strength to rebuild. The closing monologue, the truth that remains. Bullying doesn't end when the cruelty stops. It ends when courage begins. When one voice becomes two, then 10, then a movement. Emma found her strength in forgiveness. Madison found hers in accountability. Luke found his in the promise that pain will not define the next generation. Because every act of kindness is a rebellion. Every truth told out loud is a revolution. And every scar, no matter how deep, can become a story that saves someone else. Final moral, twists and truths. Scars remind us where we've been, but they don't have to dictate where we're going. Speak up, stand strong, choose kindness, even when it's hard, because silence never heals, but truth does.